guys, my name's Adam Bax. I'm from Playside Studios. I'm joined today by Erin Halpenny and Taylor Walker.
Hi.
We're producers at Playside Studios. Come on in, guys. More seats here. And we're producers at Playside Studios with a very strong art background. We all started as artists and worked our way up into a production role. So we're in a unique position in which we can talk about what it was like to get started as an artist in the industry, cracking into the industry, what it was like through college, and then from the other side of it, hiring new people, what it's like to look for new applicants, what we look for in good applicants, and then also from a production standpoint, what makes a great fresh junior and how we turn them into mids. And on that note, I just want to point out Perry down the back there with the beard. Next to him is Aaron in the white top. If you guys not paying attention at all, if you guys have any questions about that process, these guys are killer artists that we all rely on every single day in our day-to-day jobs. Definitely go have a chat to them whenever you get a chance. So that's really what we want to talk about today. With that in mind, can I get a quick show of hands of how many people here are either fresh graduates or currently studying?
Oh, thank goodness.
This is perfect. I was afraid we were going to come in and everyone's going to be like from the industry and looking up and like, oh, you guys aren't talking about crazy cool topology like the previous person. So we don't want to waste your time. Having said that, I think this talk is going to be wonderful for you guys if you're just graduated or if you're looking to graduate soon, especially if you're looking to graduate soon, so you can prepare things. And also, if you are in the industry and you're in a position of production or management of some sort of leadership, this is good. Maybe we can swap stories after this and compare notes, so to speak. We want to keep this as like I've always found it best in this sort of situation, especially talking to people, graduates, and people studying. It's great to keep it as like a Q&A session. So as we go, we've prepared a few questions, like most frequently asked questions that we typically get when we do these talks. I do a lot of talks down at AIE and SAE and that sort of thing. And I get very, like the same questions every single time. So we've prepared a few of those, and what we want to do is we want to run through like a sort of moderated board together.
Just open discussion across us and all the people sitting here as well, if you want to jump up and join in.
Yeah, so if you do have a question as we go, feel free to throw your hand up, and if we can answer, we'll definitely jump on that. And at the end, we'd like to wrap up with a proper Q&A session for you guys. I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions. So let's get into it. We're from Playside Studios. Playside Studios formed in 2012. Been around for quite a while now. We've started with a team of about 4 people. That's when I joined as an artist. And since then, we've grown to about 45 people. Very successful studio. We do original IP, very successful original IP. We can cover that in Q&A if you have any questions about that. And we also do work for hire for some very big brands, as you can see up there. It's extremely fun work. That's sort of our bread and butter. And we have a VR department as well that we recently expanded into as of, I think it was early last year?
Yeah, like 2015.
Time goes very quickly. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to sort of get started with how we first started in the industry, how we got involved in the games industry. With that, I want to talk it over to one of these guys, so I'm not talking all the time. Erin, did you want to?
Yeah, cool. So first off, I've always loved games. I love video games. I remember always my first game was like Spyro the Dragon, and I would like clip the camera into his head, and I'm like, how does this work? How is this put together? How can I do this? And I always thought it was just a dream, impossible to do. And then one day, I was at, I think, an anime convention or some really obscure convention like that, and there was a whole bunch of brochures for studying game dev. I'm like, holy crap, this is actually a thing? People do this? This isn't just, magically made. Like, people are actually behind this. People like, regular people like me can come in and join this industry. So I started studying. Pretty much whilst I was in high school, I jumped straight into it. I'm like, who needs to pass high school? I'm going to do video games. So I was full just into video games, just going to do nothing but that.
And where'd you study?
I studied at AIE in Sydney. and moved down to Melbourne actually to start working at Playside. So that was a fun journey.
How'd you get the job?
How did I get the job? Well, as you can see, our friend Vax here used to be a teacher at AIU, and he was starting off at Playside where it was pretty fresh. There was like...
There were about 10 people at that point.
There was like 10 people, and I did all my show reel. I've gone through the years, I've done my studies, and I was kind of at a point where I was getting offers, but no one was really like talking or coming back to me. And I got an offer from Playside, and I went for it real hard. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to land this job. So I sent in the application, and when I did send in my art test, I cried. I cried really hard. I was so nervous. But then, it was like a week-long art test. I finished it in the first 3 days, and I spent the rest of the days just fretting and panicking about it the entire time. And then once I got back, I heard back from everyone. They're like, "This is awesome. This is perfect. You got it." And I'm like, "Really? Seriously? This is bad. What are you talking about?"
I was the one who issued that art test. At the time, I was a lead artist at Playside, not production. And Erin's art test, by far one of the best art tests we've ever received. And her portfolio, if you guys need a perfect representation of what a dynamite portfolio looks like, definitely come talk to Erin at some point, and hopefully she shares the link. It's just laid out really well. We'll go into more detail.
Yeah, hopefully I share the link. I haven't updated that since I was a student, so it's been a while.
But we'll get into more of that a bit later.
Yeah, cool. How about yourself, Taylor? How did you come to join us in the industry?
I got my first job was actually through this event a couple of years ago when it was its very first event. I was currently studying at the time, and I was approached by Aaron, so one of the guys who runs this event. And he knew me through, we went to the same high school, and we both knew, not at the same time, but we both knew the IT teacher quite well. And she was like, "Oh yeah, Taylor is studying games." And so he messaged me on Facebook being like, "Hey, do you want to come be on the committee and help promote the event and stuff like that?" And the good thing about this event, it's not only just seeing amazing artists and people from big companies over in LA and America and stuff, but you also get to meet people like us, so from the local industry, which is where you're going to be applying. Most people end up in the local industry. So I met some local speakers, and then a couple of weeks after this event had ended, I reached out to them. I was like, "Hey, do you guys remember me from that event? Do you have any jobs or experience that I could get from you?" I got a part-time job there, and then, that's
the rest evolved from there.
my life story pretty much wrapped up.
How about yourself, Vax? How did you start out?
So tell me if this story sounds familiar. I'm hoping it doesn't too much, but I was a complete dropkick, complete failure in high school. I drew on every single book I had, including my final exams. The final week, it was HSC, it was called in New South Wales, where I graduated, and drew on all the exams, completely bummed out on everything. But someone showed me this newspaper clipping for a scholarship promotion for SAE Technical College for an animation course. I didn't know people did that. Just like Aaron said, I had no idea how films were made, how games were made. I just thought they just appeared. So
Magic, yeah.
Applied for the scholarship, actually won it. And I thought I was going to have to join the army or something like that. I thought I was going to be a complete... And not that the army's bad, by the way. It was actually a bit of a dream, but
protecting and serving and...
I didn't think I was capable of anything else, is the point. But I did the scholarship, went to that course, nailed it and loved it, and worked my ass off ever since, did a degree, and then moved on to my... I had about a 6-month period, actually, where I graduated, and this is it would have been back in about 2007, where the industry took a big crash. I don't know if you guys are familiar with all that. You might be a bit too young, but the industry took a huge nosedive then during the global financial crisis, and that's when things shut down. So there was about a 6-month period where even the best of the best artists that were graduating could not get a job. There was about 70 people in my intake for that year at the college that I went to, and out of that, 3 people got jobs. I was one of them. It was terrifying, but we didn't get jobs until at least 6 months later after graduating. It was terrifying. But I pushed through it, and during my open day, you guys do open days when you graduate? and you show off your work, and people walk around from the industry and stuff. I networked my butt off, knowing that networking is key, and I think that's something that these two just hit on before, that networking really is just king. It's who you know if you want to get a job in the industry, not necessarily your work, not necessarily your resume or anything like that. It's who you know. So networking is so critical to build that skill. It is a skill. And I networked my butt off at that event, my open day, and 6 months later, someone gave me a call back. You don't expect 6 months later someone's going to remember you, but they did. And I got a job, and it was my first foot in the door in the industry. It was amazing, yeah. What was your first day on the job like, Erin?
Much like sending in my application to get my job, I was extremely nervous. And I'm wondering if that's just because I'm an extremely nervous person.
With that, I want to tie in this question. Most people say that they learn more in the first week on the job than their entire time at uni. Would you say that's true?
100%. I feel like when I first, joined Playside, I was asked, "Do you know Unity?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know Unity." And then they're like, "Okay, do all this stuff for us." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like furiously typing in Google, "How do I use Unity?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know it. They showed us a course in uni."
What's a prefab? Question mark.
But through doing that, I'm surrounded by so many people who are just as passionate in this industry as I am, and they're doing the exact same things I'm doing. So it was great because that first week, people want to help you out on your first day of the job. They don't want to see you crash and burn. They actually want you to work with them and do stuff with them. So I had nothing but support and help from even I had programmers telling me how to use Unity for art and things like that. And it was kind of odd, but it was really appreciated that everyone would just band together and teach you everything you needed to know. And I feel like that's really true with some of our juniors that come in recently, is that I always find myself showing them new things and don't be afraid to ask, because holy crap, I didn't know what I was doing when I first joined as well. And how do you feel about that, Taylor? Were you somewhat similar on your first day, or?
So it's a little different for me because I didn't go through my whole course at uni. I got my first job about towards the end of my first year at uni. So I hadn't learned a lot from before I got my job. I knew nothing. It was awful. I don't know how I got a job, but I had only been learning before I even studied. I hadn't touched 3D. I didn't even know what Maya was or anything like that. So I hadn't had enough time to learn all of the basics. I was still kind of learning and trying to understand what I was doing. So the difference with studying and being in an industry environment is the start to end sort of pipeline. And the thing with uni and studying stuff is they will teach you, this is how you make something in Maya. And then it's okay, that's one exercise. Now we're going to look at texturing. And sometimes they go from, now modeling and texturing, but it's rarely ever from start to finish, this is how you get it into a game and finished. And that's what I learned in my first day was this, you need to make this, but now your job's not finished until it's, in engine and it's working and it looks good. If I can make something in Maya, that's great, but if I can't get it working in Unity, or I can't make the materials look pretty and work on a mobile device or anything like that, then my task isn't complete. Having said that, when I came into Playside, I learned 50 times what I had learned since I was in a previous job. And that's because people at Playside, we have this, obviously, Bax was lead artist when I joined, and he used to be a teacher, and he had so much experience so that he could teach me all of this stuff that I needed to know. But not only that, I had lots of different people who were on my projects and were on basically sitting right next to me. And when you're at uni, you're sitting with a bunch of students. Yeah, you have a teacher that's telling you what to do, but you don't have everyone around you who's done this same thing that you've been through. So they know exactly what to teach you. And if you have any issues, you can turn to the person next to you and you're like, I have no idea what this is. How do I do it? And that's, I think, what you can learn. You cannot learn that in a classroom. And it's amazing.
I feel like that rings true for a lot of us. I remember you saying you had a similar experience on your first day, Bex, because you were kind of self-learning yourself because you're by yourself, weren't you?
My first job in the industry, the one that I first landed, I had to go out to the RAAF base at Amberley, just outside of Brisbane. It was for a military contract for a company that doesn't exist anymore, so I can mention them. They're called Ball Solutions Group. And they were doing VR stuff long before VR existed. This was, the primitive shit we're talking. So they were using like chunky. Have you guys heard of zero latency? You've seen their setup with the laptops. Imagine that, but the laptop, it plugs into this big screen in front of you, and you sort of have to walk on this thing, like this slidey shit.
Treadmill thing? Yeah.
Treadmill type thing. And they couldn't do the goggles type stuff yet. So they had a big projector screen that was maybe slightly over 180 degrees and really high. It was probably like that sort of high from the ground. And it projected in 3D inward. So you had almost like this cave feeling. It was really cool. I was the only artist on that project, which means the first job out of uni, I was the only artist, and everyone else that I was working with, programmers, namely, and also some production people who had to liaison with some of the military contracts. They were all working out of Canberra. So I had the whole of, everything was on me. And this was back in, I think it was Unity 2 something or 1 point something. It was really early. I can tell you, if you want to know how early it was, ZBrush had just hit version 2. And yeah, it was crazy. And so that was really intense for me. Similar to these guys' experience, you had to have, and I think Aaron touched on it, you have to have drive, personal drive, when you first start. A lot of people think when they get that letter that comes through, the email that comes through and says, hey, we'd like to offer you this opportunity or something like that, they think, oh, fuck yeah, I've made it, that's it, I'm done. Or they start their first day or the first few days and they think, I'm done, I've made it, I'm in the industry. It doesn't work that way. You have to keep on it and keep practicing. You have to have the personal drive when you first get in there. Show them the passion that took you from, going through uni and surviving that shit and becoming the best. Not just the best, if you think about what that means you had to compete against everyone in your class, every single person that is in that intake for that year, in that particular college, and then all the colleges in Australia, and then you've got international students as well. So you have to have the personal drive to beat all of them, be the best there, and then you have to have the drive to do all your communication, your networking and everything like that to get the job. You have to have the drive to stay on it. What I mean by that is that's something that's more relatable to every industry. You probably know how depressing it can be when you send out 1,000 emails and you get no responses from anyone when you're applying for a job. You have to have the drive to stay on it and never give up. And then you have to have that drive, you have to keep that drive when you get the job. When you finally land the job and they say, hey, you're the only artist on this project, which happens more commonly than you might think, especially in this sort of industry, the indie scene, that sort of thing, and games in Australia in particular. And you have to be able to demonstrate that and show that and be able to keep learning these new skills, stay up to date.
Yeah, I think that ties in nicely with what we're going to talk about next, which is common mistakes. Well, first of all, landing an artist role, but then also common mistakes that you make as a junior and kind of tips and ways to get around doing that. One thing that you can see most commonly with juniors is what Bax was just talking about before, is you get the job and then you're like, cool, well, I'm in the industry now, so that's it.
Time to relax.
Job done. But the best juniors that we see at Playside, at least, on our projects and stuff, are people that they know what things that they don't know how to do, and they're learning that, and they're watching tutorials, and they're asking people. And one of our newest juniors is, she was actually being mentored by Perry, so the guy we mentioned before, and we are doing this thing where it's like a buddy system, and you place them right next to someone who's more experienced, and they get to learn as much as they can from that one person. And it's something that we haven't done a lot of.
There's a dog, by the way.
So it's something that we are trying to more actively do by placing the newest people next to really talented people and they can learn from. And you can see from this one artist that she is just learning so much quicker than a lot of the other people that we bring in, just because she has this opportunity to learn and grow and figure out what she doesn't know how to do and learn how to do visual effects and how to do animating in Unity and things that you probably haven't been able to practice or learn that much from uni.
Or even considered, really.
Yeah.
I feel like that rings true a lot. When I was first joining the job, I shadowed under Bax quite a lot. And then once we did start getting new juniors in, it started to fall onto me to show the juniors the ropes. And I remember teaching Perry and Aaron back there, who are now teaching themselves, which is really awesome to see, seeing people who shadowed under you now actually leading the charge, kind of in a little sense. But it's really important as a junior to make sure you know when to ask for help. Like I touched upon that before, because a lot of us are kind of clueless when we first join in. Like we've gone through the courses, we know what we're talking about, but sometimes it's just how to relate that to a job is really hard. Like how does the knowledge I have relate to what I'm actually doing nowadays to earn money? You know, it's really hard to put those two and two together. So it's great to have someone to guide you, and you do have seniors working with you when you are in this industry. Like everyone in this industry is working together, and it's always great to reach out and ask for help, even if it's someone who's like a lower level than you or a higher level than you. Like everyone has knowledge in specific areas that they love to share. Like I always find myself like reaching out to programmers and animators and riggers, and I'm like, teach me everything you know. Like I'm not gonna probably go into rigging or anything like that, but I'm like, I want to know how I can do my job better for you guys as well. Yeah. And I think that's a really strong skill that most juniors should strive to have in their new jobs, is just being open to ask and learn and absorb as much information as you can.
Yeah, not only learn things that like art related, and especially in the small studio and the local industry, like studios like Playside, we're working in very small teams a lot of the time. A lot of our projects only have a handful of people in it. One of my first projects, I had myself as the artist and a programmer, and that was it. And so I could make the art and stuff, but then I had to learn to obviously get it working in game and set up kits and make the game, essentially. And I think that a lot of the juniors coming in, you've got to realize that it's no longer just kind of, this is art and this is what you're doing. It's kind of this bleeding between art and setting it up and doing other stuff like that. And even, when you go, if you do ever do characters, you got to then pass your work on to riggers and animators and stuff like that. And so what I found was the best when I was on that project, which is me and a programmer, is I would go to the programmer and I'd be like, can you show me how to set this one thing up? And I would learn how to do that, and then I would be able to do it for every other project that I've done after. So if I didn't know how to do it, I would get him to show me exactly how to set it up. Even though it wasn't, technically art related, I could then go and be able to do it for the project and not need to keep harassing this programmer who has to set up the entire project and get it running as a game, and be able to do it without having his help all the time.
Yeah, I think one of the worst experiences I've had with a junior was they told me that I didn't know what I was talking about because I wasn't a programmer. So we were putting together a game, and I was saying, look, we're having some errors here. We're making some nested prefabs. Can you change it to do this? And he's just like, but you're an artist. What would you know? And it's like, ooh, boy. So I feel like you definitely shouldn't limit yourself to what your expertise is. You need to know what everyone else is working on. In order to work together and put things together as a team, because a game is a huge kind of putting together of all your ideas and all your aspirations into one little thing. So it's pretty much a whole conglomerate of people coming together and just shipping a product that's really awesome. So don't ever cut out people just because there's some different aspect of the job that you don't really touch on that much, because I think they all relate. They all go hand in hand, and we're all trying to go for the same thing in the end.
This is good tips for when you land the job, but how many people here actually will be graduating soon or next year or something like that? How many people are still studying right now? Okay, so for you guys specifically, and actually for everyone, you can do this yourself still. We spoke about that mentor system that we have at Playside. That's a very recent addition. We've trialed it, and it's happened automatically with people asking for help and having sort of buddy mentor type things happen. But because of my background, I've been in the industry for about 11 years now. My background has always been working solo or working with remote teams or working with teams that I'm managing. So it's very much I have to have that drive, and I'm usually dropped in the deep end and have to figure it out. The buck doesn't go any higher. It has to stop with me, and I have to figure it out. And so what we typically do, at least at Playside, is the new people that come in, and Taylor spoke about it just a moment ago, is that we put them on a project and they are the sole artist and they have to figure it out. That's not to say they don't have the support networks. Aaron spoke about that. There's plenty of support networks, plenty of places you can reach out to myself and whoever else and get the help you need. But it's an opportunity to show self-drive, if you come in and you've got your portfolio and say you had like a fish like that in your portfolio or something like that, and we hired you based on that. I'm not saying that would happen. It actually wouldn't. But if you did that, and then we required, so when you pick up that coin, it needs to have an effect. That's the task that I've assigned you as producer. I need it to have an effect. Reference this game. I need you to take care of that. And you've never done PFX. What do? You figure it out. You're dropped in the deep end. At the end of the day, that task has to be done, whether it's by me, myself as a producer, I'll come on and do it, I've got an art background, or whether it's by, I have to get some specialty PFX guy to come in. Perry does that on a lot of projects when we don't have time. But if you can figure it out, you have so much more power and creative power on these projects. That's something that's really key to Playside, at least, is that if you are the sole artist on it and you're dropped in the deep end, and we give you that freedom as producers to do all that sort of stuff, you can be really empowered to be creative with it. We don't know what that coin PFX is going to look like. We have a reference in a different game because we know that's a popular game that works. But you can create it however you want, and it can be really empowering in that sense. So how does that apply to what I was just saying before, is that if you are looking to graduate and you're doing projects at the moment, group projects, or you're doing personal projects, or maybe you've just graduated and you need to fill your time whilst you look for a job, or you need a personal project on the side whilst you're working and looking for a role in the industry, is drop yourself in the deep end. Do the things that scare you and figure it out. That's ultimately how you grow. You have to put yourself in that conflicting situation where you're fucking terrified and you don't know how to solve it. You got to figure it out. The other thing I want to mention is, I don't know if anyone caught the word kits before. Did anyone catch that? Yeah. There's going to be a few terms like that we throw around. And I think it's important if you hear those things, especially from other speakers as well. They might have their own version of terms that they use, and you might go, I don't recognize that. I probably shouldn't ask because maybe I'm meant to know about it. Speak up. Definitely throw your hand up and go, hey, you mentioned kits before. What was that? Or something like that. Because a lot of that could be really good tips for you guys. Just to break that one down really quickly, the way we do a lot of these games, the one on the left there is Icy Ropes, and that was your first game, right? No? What was your first game?
It wasn't mobile. I went to VR.
Oh, you went to VR first. That was your first mobile game, though?
No,
What was
Monkey
your
Ropes was.
So,
Wow.
wait, who made that one?
You were on it.
You were on it.
I wasn't on it.
Huh,
No, you
whatever. Someone was on it.
you were there for a little bit, then it was Aki, and it was just.
Oh, it was Arky.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe what kits are?
Sure. Okay. So basically, what we did for Monkey Ropes, which is essentially the sequel to Icy Ropes, is you have a kit. It can mean like design or like art, but it's basically the section of a game. So for a game like Monkey Ropes, we have like think of like a prefab of like art and stuff. And then you've got like, these are 4 platforms, and then there's got the background and the art, and that's like one kit. And then the way that we use it in mobiles is we'll spawn them in like by code, and as you're jumping along, you get like a randomly spawned kit, which is like different types of art and platforms and stuff. And that can be design or art. And for Monkey Ropes, there wasn't a designer on it because I was doing the design. So I was doing art and design for that, which meant I was setting up all of these different platforms to get different gameplay, but also it was a visual thing as well. Like I was placing coins and stuff in there, what platforms would look like, background and stuff like that. But then we make it so Endless Games, which is essentially all the games that we do on mobile, have these random kits so it's not like the same. You're seeing the same thing over and over again. They randomize it, and they're usually quite small, but you can have, for example, we had challenge levels and stuff, and that was just a full, like one kit was just a whole level, and it was like you bounce over these exact platforms each time. But usually they're quite small, and we randomize them, so you have a different gameplay experience each time.
Yeah, so they're just kind of like chunks of little information, whether it be art information or design information or whatever else.
And those can go hand in hand. So the way we do it is an artist can block in, say, a bunch of platforms, and that's the art for it, right? A bunch of different backgrounds. They can block that in, maybe with some trees and stuff, and none of that impacts gameplay. You can't land on it, you can't do anything with it. And then a designer can come in, and they can place platforms in different configurations, and you can set it up like that. And then you can swap out the art and swap out the design and multiply exponentially all the different kits you have. And then you can put those into, these are the easy kits, these are the medium kits, these are the hard kits, and every 30 seconds, you're going to stop cycling the easy kits, and you're going to go to the medium kits, things like that. So we can look for smart ways, efficient ways to multiply our art and make our time more efficient on these projects. Little things like that I think really key to think about if you're an up-and-comer looking to graduate, looking to get into the industry, particularly in Australia. I don't think this stuff is too relevant to overseas. You know, if you're looking for a job at Blizzard or something like that, I don't think this stuff is going to be 100% relevant. If you're looking to get into the industry here, whether that's indie or whether that's one of the bigger studios like us or EA or something like that, that's where this stuff is going to really apply. Because you need to be thinking, like these guys have said just a moment ago, like holistically. It's not just a case of being an artist really anymore. You have to have design background, or you can't be just sitting on the side as a specialty artist going, I'm just going to be a little animator in the corner. It doesn't work that way in this industry. You need to be multi-talented. You need to be a generalist to really get ahead. I think I was here last year and I mentioned a lot of this. So if you were here last year, I hope that resonated with some of you and you push forward with that generalist idea. The other thing that I want to touch on really quick is something Taylor said a moment ago about, and she's brought this up, she really coined this phrase, I think, is that if it's not in code, it's kind of your responsibility to figure it out. We have that sort of policy with artists. Because what Taylor was saying before is a lot of artists, you know, they'll do, okay, so do the model, and I export the FBX, pop it in Unity, and my job's done. That was the task for complete a coin pickup. Well, that's not how it works. You know, you've got, what about it animating and floating and bobbing around? Does it have to move with anything? Are there conveyor belts on the track that have to affect it? What happens when a player collides with it? Does it have PFX to show, to illuminate it when it's on the track or in a level? And yeah, when I pick it up, what effect does it make? Does it scroll up into the corner? You know, all of that sort of stuff. And the sort of creative freedom we give our artists, they need to think about all of that. And a lot of that hinges on, you know, you have to figure out animation, you have to figure out design, you have to figure out, you know, all this stuff. And Unity makes it very easy. Like the animation system in Unity, anyone can use it. I can use it. And I'm not great with any of that stuff. Hopefully these guys can attest to that. I'm pretty poor at that stuff. But I figure it out very quickly. It takes a little Google search and you can get animating. It takes a little Google search and you can start using the PFX system. A little Google search and you can start using the animation system to drive the PFX system. You know, you just have to have the drive to do it. I think that was it that I wanted to cover there. Yeah, that was all. On this, we tend to follow a particular art style. Getting more into the art stuff, we follow a particular, like a generalist sort of art style overall with all our mobile titles. And I think these guys can sort of talk a bit more about why that is, because you guys produce a lot of these titles.
Yeah, I feel like for mobile games, when I was first starting out, I didn't think you could do a lot with them at all, because I thought it had to be all low poly, it had to be as simple as possible, but that's not true at all. We can actually do a lot with mobile. Like what we were playing on PCs like a couple of years ago, we can have on a phone running perfectly fine. And I feel like a lot of the time in mobile games, especially like I guess with Playside, is we're trying to take it to a more fun route rather than an overcomplicated route. And a lot of the time what resonates with a lot of people is just simple, is nice and clean and easy to understand. And I feel like that rings a lot true with our art as well. Like a lot of people playing mobile games, they just want to get in, they want to have fun, and it needs to be short and quick and sweet, and they need to remember it like, yeah, I can keep playing this over and over again. And I feel like that's why with our art styles, we try to keep them as simple and clean and as approachable as possible to such a wide range of audiences. Because on the mobile platform, everyone has a mobile. Like almost everyone in this room has an iPhone or an Android or something that they can play a game on like every single day. And it needs to be so quick, because most people pick up a game and drop it instantly on their phone. If you have a PC game, you're sitting and playing that for like months or years. But with a mobile game, it's just, here's a game, have fun, and then let's hope they stay and they have a fun time whilst they're there. Like, I feel like with our art style, we just want to make sure it's like really approachable. Like all the games we play, my mom's always like, I want to play that game. That's my favorite game.
The mom test.
The mom test.
We actually have that for a lot of the stuff that we do. We call it the mom test. I had to do it last night for a new AR functionality going into one of our games. We could drop a character on the table. And so the functionality was, all right, so I can turn the toggle on, position the camera, drop the guy onto the table and look at it, and then resummon it, watch an animation if I wanted to. So then I handed it to a friend and said, would your mum be able to figure this out? And that's the mum test. Yeah. We have to use that for quite a few things we do to make sure that things are casual.
Yeah, I think because our audience is such a wide range, like we're not, usually having hardcore gamers. If you give a hardcore game to a hardcore gamer, they can probably work it out without, having to be explained how to use a mouse or how to use a keyboard or how to use a game controller. But that's why I think with mobile, we have to keep it as approachable as possible, because we're going in such a wide range of audiences that have no idea what's going on most of the time.
Like the mobile industry, like all the games on the App Store, like you got to remember that 90% of the people playing mobile games are casual gamers. They're not people who play WoW or they play the really grindy games. They're casual players. And also adding on the art style is usually our original IP games, so the ones that we make in-house, they have timelines of about 1 to 2 months. So making an entire art, and usually sometimes we only have one artist on there, and some people will jump on and off, but there's a sole artist. So you have one artist making an entire game in about a month or 2 months. You got to keep in mind that this style, it's working for us. These games that we've been making, they are doing well in the App Store. So that we need to see why, the art style must be working. People aren't getting put off by this. So if it's working, we keep using it, and we know that we can get all of this art pumped out in the time frame, and we know that it's going to do well on the art store as well.
Yeah, that's not just basic commercial success. I mean, every single original IP we've ever launched, that's titles that we've developed the IP for, has been featured on the App Store. And generally speaking, most of them made it into the top 50. Most of our games have actually hit in the top 10 and have been featured #1 in the US, around the world, many, many times. So this art style does work. I think, and I just want to touch on this very quickly, there is this notion, at least in Australia and in the indie scene, and maybe artists that are coming up and graduating, that sort of thing. You look at games like, I don't know what the really popular games are like now that have crazy, crazy graphics. And then you look at this and you think, oh, I don't want to be doing this with my life. This is sort of pathetic. This is beneath me, sort of thing. There is a difference between simple and shit. It's as simple as that. We get clones of games every time we make one of these because they're successful, because they make a shit ton of money, because they get a lot of downloads. We hit 1 million downloads pretty much on every title within the first week. So we get a lot of clones, particularly on Android. You compare our games, you take a screenshot of our game, and you just look at a screenshot or boot up the game on the clone, and you just compare the art style. Don't compare the gameplay. Look at a static screenshot, and you will see the difference between simple and shit. It's very, very, very important to understand that, and it goes back to something I learned, and I wish I had learned a lot earlier, and that's this idea that you don't have to understand why, you don't have to like something to appreciate why it's popular. And for me, I liken that to Justin Bieber or Kim Kardashian, because not my taste, but they generate huge revenue, huge numbers. I mean, Kylie Jenner, for instance, in the top 10, top 5 cultural icons in the world. Not for me, not my cup of tea. I don't follow on Snapchat, but you have to appreciate how they got to that position or why they are so popular and break that down and deconstruct it. And it's the same with this sort of stuff. And I think that's really key. Yeah.
One thing I really want to talk about next is applying for jobs. And the reason I want to bring this up is because currently we are in this huge, myself at least, every day, and also I pass it on to Bax as well, but we're looking for people for our VR team currently. So if anyone wants a job, come give me your business card at the end. Thanks.
Chase Taylor up specifically.
Cool.
Only her, not us.
Just worry about them. Just do it to me. So we are looking through applications, and there are some really common mistakes that I'm seeing every day. And they're really simple. They're just simple things that can be easily changed, but they're stuff that is quite common. And the first thing that I want to talk about is, obviously we have one jobs email. So all of our applicants for every job goes into that one email. And we have on our website a bunch of different positions being advertised. That's the word. So when people come out of studying, not everyone knows what they want to do. So I know when I was studying, I wanted to be an animator. That didn't happen. So a lot of people are still being like, oh, I like drawing, so I could be a 2D artist, but I also, have started learning 3D. And the most common issue that I'm seeing when people apply is they apply for every job that's listed and they do it in one email. So the title is 2D artist / UI artist / 3D artist / producer / I did code once, so I'll chuck programming in there as well. And you click on their email and you go to their ArtStation or whatever their portfolio is, and there's a very clear, like if they have all of that, sort of every single job on their ArtStation, so 2D and 3D and stuff like that, you can definitely, the moment you look at it, you can tell what they're best at. And I think a lot of people can do that. You have people who are better at 3D, and you can 100% tell straight away from their ArtStation if they've got 3D work and they're better at it, it's instant. And I think people just, when they go to apply for a job, pick one. If you want to apply for multiple, do it in separate emails. That's a key thing.
Because we search.
We search, yeah.
We search through the email client, like 3D, because we need to quickly find one. And I think it's just because we don't have a great deal of time.
Yeah. So if I type in like 3D in the search, sometimes people forget to put like 3D or whatever they're going in, so they'll just be like job application. You're probably going to get filtered out because I type in 3D artist and I'm not going to see if you don't have it in your subject line. That kind of ties into my next thing with having ArtStation with multiple, 2D and 3D, and you've got animation and stuff. When you're studying, they make you do, animation and 3D and 2D and UI and stuff. You don't need to put all of that on your ArtStation. If you're wanting to be an environment artist, highlight all of that. And there's a really good thing that actually is a great example of what happened last week when I was showing back some of the applicants. And I had 2 ArtStations, and one of them had 3D artwork, and there was about 20 pieces on there. And I would say 10 or less of them were really, really great art, like great 3D art. And the rest of them they were from 2 years ago when they were just starting and they weren't good. And then I had a second folio, which had 3 art pieces, and it was not as good as the person's great artwork, but it was good still. And I showed those 2 folios to Bax, and I was like, which one do you like better? Immediately, it was like the one with 3 pieces, because you're not highlighting your weaknesses or your flaws or anything. You're showing your best artwork, and we are looking at that and going, I don't see anything wrong with this folio. There's like really good pieces of artwork, and we're drawn to that rather than having like 20 art pieces. It's like, great, you've done a lot of art, but most of them you don't need to be highlighting. Is that a question? Yeah, cool. Yep.
Would you recommend going through your ArtStation occasionally and cleaning it out and taking away some of the old stuff?
100%. I'd say there was 3 pieces of work on this one ArtStation. You don't need to have like 20 or something. I would say if you're just coming to apply for a job, go anywhere from like 3 to 5 art pieces of your best work, and always clean it out. Like every time you go to apply for a job, make sure you've cleaned out your artwork.
We're getting told to wrap it up now. I wanted to have time for Q&A. It looks like we've run out of time. There's a couple of other things I really want to run through, particularly with people who are graduating or have graduated. We're going to be floating around for a bit. If you want to talk, we are actually hiring at the moment, both in our VR division and our mobile division. Please come and see us. And if you have any questions, if you're confused about how do I go about getting a job, there was more we wanted to cover, a lot more. Come and see us and ask us as many questions as you want. And if you don't know, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Come have a chat and say, look, I'm a little confused and I don't know how to approach this, how best to approach this. Have a chat, We're pretty easy to approach. Don't be afraid of us. And networking is king. So we are here. Come and see us. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.